morning, everyone. I'm very much honored to have been invited to say a few words about this very important, challenging, and still evolving topic. And I want to congratulate Rohinton for an excellent presentation. My connection with this topic, digitalization and new technologies, is in conjunction with my involvement with an ongoing evaluation of a large international organization, given the issues that are presented by these new technologies, whether the multilateral institutions are capable, able to provide timely and good advice to their clients regarding this highly complex and evolving field. And this is an ongoing investigation, and it will take probably a couple of years, but I know that a number of international organizations, including the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, and African Development Bank are already starting on doing flagship research, flagship studies on digitalization and the various policy implications for both internal organization of these institutions, how to organize themselves given these important technologies, but also the fact that these technologies are beginning to affect the global economy, the global setting. They're affecting international trade flows. They're beginning to affect international finance. I don't know if you've heard recently, a number of Wall Street banks have introduced a new department on blockchain in their respective banks. And JP Morgan, which to my amazement apparently handles more than $3 trillion transactions per day with its clients, used blockchain technology with one of the clients for one day as a test, which was about a transaction for $200 billion, probably from someone from this region. And apparently the cost to that transaction was a fraction of a typical cost for that bank. So there are incredible economies of scale and scope being introduced by these new technologies, and it's affecting everything across the field of economics, including some of the important policy issues that Rohinton referred to. I wanted to basically focus on two issues because I have only 10 minutes. One of the important things to consider is that how these technologies, which are morphing into new things on a daily basis, so it's a very, I would say, very unusual technological breakthrough in a sense that it's a very generalized technology. It's probably very similar to what the steam engine or electricity was more than a century ago or 2 centuries ago for a steam engine, but the issue is for digital technology, it's continuously changing in a very unpredictable ways. On a daily basis, you can see hundreds of new apps are being developed that are affecting, in a positive way in most respects, affecting delivery of social services, banking, most of the SDG, sustainable development goals are most likely to be benefiting one way or the other from this technology, but they're very destructive to existing practices for both governments and business sector and households. So let's take the goal of poverty reduction, which is very important for the international development community. But the most important engine for reducing poverty is economic growth through employment generation. But one of the most important effects of these new technologies is actually on employment through automation and robotics. Well, how much would this affect, these new technologies would affect economic growth, for example? I reviewed, there is a vast literature already out there. Some are by institutions such as the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, OECD, but also private sector, McKinsey, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they have done global simulations, modeling, and so forth. And most of the results are positive. They show that global economic growth over the next 20 to 30 years could accelerate. The private sector scenarios say between 2.5 to 3.5 percentage points extra growth per year would result from adaptation to these new technologies. Well, that would be huge. On this more conservative side, they're pointing to 1 to 1.5 percentage points faster economic growth in advanced economies, and somewhat around that figure also for emerging market economies. But when you look at these projections and scenarios, the major assumption is that no jobs are going to be lost, that basically the labor that will be replaced through automation and robotics is going to be trained immediately, and they will find a job, so there is no increase in unemployment. And we know that that's not the case, at least up to now. Some of you may be familiar with the macroeconomic consequences of the global recession that took place on the advanced economies, like take the United States, where unemployment rose to double digit, and it has come down, and they have now one of the lowest unemployment rates in recent history, in the past 50 years, around 3.8, 3.9%. But hardly any change in the wages. There have been some moderate increase in wages, but this is unprecedented, that such a pressure in the labor force, on the labor force, increased demand has not resulted in. So one has to go investigate to see, okay, what has happened in the U.S., And the data is beginning to come out from Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.S. as well as OECD studies that shows that actually there has been a very rapid increase in jobs that are high-tech, high-skilled, and also moderate increase in employment in the low-level, low-skilled jobs, garbage collection, and so forth. The middle part of the jobs that may have to do with manufacturing, in fact, those have actually gone down or have increased now somewhat, but still in the US, the manufacturing employment is 20% below where it was in year 2000. So the middle wage positions are being lost and not being replaced. The lowest skill jobs are probably still not worth to be automated, but the high skill jobs, which are jobs that work with the technology, with the new technology, they are rising, and that's causing a huge inequality in the wages. And the average wage doesn't appear to be moving, but in fact there are major changes, structural changes that are taking place. And I think this probably is being replicated across the advanced economies. Now, in terms of losses of the jobs, data shows that, in fact, there is a very high correlation between R&D spending, university research, and creation of high-tech jobs. So there is, universities in the United States are producing, beginning to produce these high-skilled laborers who will find immediately jobs in the market. And there are also jobs that people who are being trained that they don't have adequate training, and they could be retrained. But there is a cost, someone has to pay for that cost, maybe the private sector or public sector, but that has not been really decided. If you're listening to the Democratic and candidates that have already shown interest to run in the U.S. election, many of them are focusing on the cost of education and creation of high-tech jobs. So there is a connection between research, R&D, and the creation of those jobs. Estimates by the World Bank and other firms, the private firms, have shown that job losses in the U.S. Because of the introduction of robotics and automation could be up to 40% of the current jobs will disappear, 40%, over the next 15 to 20 years. And so the question is what percentage of those will be replaced. Estimates that exist for developing countries are much higher. Thank you. And so that, for example, low-wage countries like Ethiopia or Bangladesh could see a much higher percentage of the current jobs to be lost to automation, because these are repetitive jobs, and wages in these countries are beginning to go up. Like, there was a news item I heard that even in Bangladesh, some of the segments of the garment industry are replacing low-wage workers with robotics automation. So even developing countries are moving there in order to be competitive. Very important paper by Danny Roderick recently that shows that the global supply chains and regional supply chains are also going through major changes, where automation is kicking out some of the low-wage countries that are contributing to this supply chain, and so there is this going on. Now, what is the extent of it? It's very difficult to predict. So the answer that many of the development experts are giving are focusing on two areas: human capital and on government policy to come up with some sort of a stronger social safety net, maybe some kind of a universal income, which, of course, these have very high costs, fiscal costs. There is an estimate for the US on universal income is about $3 trillion a year, the cost of that, if you want to cover everyone with basic needs, free education, free health, and so forth. And so the issue is, what is it that is required for human capital? And I think I just want to leave you with one comment, is that actually a lot of things, positive things, are possible, but it's a matter of public discussion, debate, and also a matter of finding ways to deal with, to harnessing these energies that are being released and minimizing the harm. There is a very important report, again, by the World Bank on World Development Report in 2018, which is on education. It's called Learning. And there is a section in that report that focuses on impact of high tech on education in developing countries. And they did a very interesting investigation of doing almost 100 impact evaluation on various schemes across the developing world, where the technology and the traditional teaching was combined, and you get a very different impact in terms of scores, improvement in scores, numeracy as well as literacy scores, but some countries improved and some countries actually deteriorated. Those countries that showed deterioration were those countries where they actually replaced teachers with machines. I mean, they reduced the time of teaching by teachers and basically replaced that time with the usage of new technology. And maybe the children didn't really have the basics in order to be able to use the machines properly. But in countries where they were complemented, the traditional teaching and the usage of computer, the scores did improve very significantly. Thank you.